Join me as I sew this medieval fantasy dress inspired by Game of Thrones. It's a very pretty dress with a majestic look, and it's sure to be the perfect choice for your next Ren Fair outfit. Originally, this dress pattern comes with written instructions, but today we're going to accompany it with this video. To sew this dress, I'm going to use a gorgeous velvet with gold accents. The problem with this type of pattern featuring vertical panels is that the fullness of the skirt can lead to a lot of fabric waste. This is because the pieces, especially in a fabric like velvet, where the nap has a specific direction and sheen, must be placed perfectly along the grain. As you can see, this means you'll end up with a lot of unused fabric, but that's okay because you can reuse those scraps in other projects later. They're perfect for sewing a blouse. In fact, if you go back a couple of videos before this one, you'll see that I also sewed the Eowyn corset with this fabric. Here's an overview of the bodice pieces. There are 4 pieces for the front and 4 for the back. The construction is very simple because you just have to join the vertical panels and the shoulder. The only difficulty might be that since the pieces are so long, it could be a bit tricky to get everything to line up along the entire length, but you can pin it in place while paying attention to the notches. Starting with the front, we'll align the center and the side panel right sides together and sew along the seam allowance. In curved areas like the bust or waist, you can make notches to make it easier to press the seam open. I always tell you this, but to press and shape the bust properly, you need to use a sewing ham. On our blog, you can download the pattern for my sewing hams for free. Now we'll join the center back and the side panel. We'll do the same on the right and left sides of the garment.
We have the front and the back, so now we're going to join both pieces along the side.
And also along the shoulder seam. Follow the same steps as before. Sew along the seam allowance and press the seam open. Once one half of the garment is sewn, this is the result. We'll repeat the process on the other side and join the pieces along the center back. As you can see on the garment from the inside, all the areas with a slight curve have notches that allow you to better adapt the shape to the body when ironing. In the chest area, as an optional step, we could add a type of padding made from batting.
Doing this is very simple. You just need to cut out a circle of batting, and since the bust isn't flat, simply make a small fold of a couple of centimeters so the circle takes on a bit of shape. Press it lightly with the iron, and it's ready. This circle goes in the center of the side panel seam, right at the bust start on the pattern. We'll secure it with a few small stitches, thanks to the garment's seam allowance at both the top and bottom. Now let's move on to the sleeve. The sleeve consists of two pieces, and we'll start by sewing the bottom seam, which has the most pronounced curve. Place the pieces right sides together and sew along the seam allowance. Make notches in the curved area, and carefully, using sewing hams, press the seam open. Now align the pieces along the second seam. Again, sew along the seam allowance from top to bottom. Press the seam open, and when you reach the shoulder area, since it has a slightly rounded shape, you'll need to use the sewing ham. If you haven't cut the lining yet, cut it now and sew the sleeves the same way you did with the outer fabric sleeves. Turn the lining sleeve inside out and insert the outer sleeve inside so that the right sides are facing each other. Align the entire cuff seam. sew along the seam allowance. Before turning the sleeve right side out, trim the excess fabric from the corner so it doesn't bunch up inside the fabric. Now, turn it right side out and press the edge. At the armhole, baste the two layers of fabric together so they act as a single layer. On the pattern, you'll see notches indicating that you need to fold the fabric at the top of the sleeve to create a draped effect. This is how the drape will look when you wear the dress. To secure it, simply stitch along the seam. The next step is to sew the dress lining. On the inside of the dress, all the pieces are cut from lining fabric, except for the center front piece, which is cut from the outer fabric.
Otherwise, we'll follow the same steps as before to sew the entire dress. Sew the shoulders as well, and then we'll move on to joining the outer fabric to the lining. To do this, place the lining and the outer dress right sides together, following the entire neckline contour. Work your way down to the hem of the dress, and I'll make the stitching up to the center front seam where it meets the side panel. That's because I want to finish the rest of the hem by hand. Since these are very long stretches, make sure to pin everything securely and ensure the pieces line up properly.
Stitch along the seam allowance in the area I mentioned, and before turning it right side out, clip the curved areas of the neckline, etc. After turning it right side out, press the entire outline of the garment. Baste the armhole outline so that the outer fabric and the lining act as a single layer of fabric. Now we're going to sew the sleeve, but the sleeve armhole is slightly shorter than the garment's armhole.
So we need to ease the top of the sleeve head to adjust the length.
To do this, we'll sew a long stitch, similar to the one used to gather a garment, across the top of the sleeve head.
You can sew 1 or 2 top stitches that stay within the seam allowance.
We'll pull on the thread at both ends to slightly ease the sleeve head.
We won't actually gather it, but you'll notice that it will take on a slightly rounded shape. And now, to attach the sleeve to the body, we'll use the various markings and notches, starting with the underarm, the balance marks on the front and back, and finally the shoulder notch or seam. We'll align the entire contour of the armhole on both pieces, right sides together. Once it's secured, sew along the seam allowance. You can then finish the seam with bias tape or a serger.
Finally, I'll hand sew the hem of the dress. To do this, I'll fold the hem's seam allowance inward and baste it to the outer fabric. Why am I doing it this way? Because these fabric pieces are very large. Some parts are cut on the bias and can sag. This can cause puckering between the outer fabric and the lining. So I'm going to adjust the length of the entire lining by hand to match the length of the outer dress. If you're in a hurry and prefer a more industrial approach, simply sew the pieces right sides together and then turn it right side out.
Press the hem you just made. Now, with the dress on the dress form, the fabric will drape to its current length, including any areas that may have sagged due to the weight of the fabric itself. So what I'm going to do is, after a few centimeters, I'll start folding the lining seam allowance inward to bring it to the correct length. Fold the seam allowance inward and pin it in place at various points, always making sure the outer fabric retains its drape and movement. Once you've pinned the lining in several places, we'll refine the entire hem by basting it. After basting it, press it, and then you'll simply need to finish the entire hem by hand.
Finally, we'll finish the dress's closure with some ties. I made the ties with the lining fabric using the spaghetti strip technique. If you don't know how to make spaghetti strips, don't worry. I'll leave a link to a specific tutorial in the description box. We'll place a tie at the center front edge, which will be joined to the side panel seam on the other side of the front. The loop will be at the waist notch height. The ones I'm placing here will be on the inside.
Next, we'll place others on the other side, so that those are the ones on the outside. We'll place the next ones here. And if you don't want them to show, you could use a hook and eye closure. With that, we've finished sewing the dress.